She was left to die tied to a tree. No water, no hope, no one coming. Until a man her people called a savage chose to break every rule to save her. The sun showed no mercy. It burned the canyon floor, turning the ground into fire beneath Elsie's torn dress. The wind carried sand in her mouth, but she had no strength to spit it out. Her lips were cracked. Her throat was dry. Her hands, tied tightly behind her back, had gone numb hours ago. The rope had cut deep into her wrists, leaving behind rings of blood and dust. She lay on her side against a dead branch that once belonged to a mesquite tree. The bark scraped her skin. Flies circled her face. Somewhere above, a vulture waited, wings stretched wide in the hot sky. Elsie had trusted the wrong man. Clayton Barrick had seemed kind at first. He wore a smile that looked safe, and his voice had sounded like comfort. He had promised to help her escape. Her uncle had sold her off to marry a stranger in a town she had never seen. Clayton said he would take her away. He said he knew people who could help. She had believed him, until they reached the canyon. There, everything changed. Clayton's eyes went cold. His voice grew hard. "You think you can use me and run?" he had snarled, pushing her down. "You know better than the rest." Elsie had tried to fight. She had scratched him, bit him, screamed, but it only made him angrier. He tied her to the tree and spat on the ground. "Let the sun teach you manners," he said. Then he rode away. That had been hours ago. Now, the heat pressed down like a blanket made of fire. Her dress clung to her skin. Every breath hurt. She tried to scream again, but only a weak rasp escaped her throat. Her eyes stung. Her body shook. She had always feared dying alone. Now it was happening. She closed her eyes. Maybe it would be easier that way. Maybe if she just stopped fighting, the pain would go away. Maybe death would be kind. Then a sound. Faint. Distant. Hoofbeats. Elsie forced her eyes open. Dust moved far down the canyon path. A shape appeared. A rider. But it was too far to see clearly. She blinked. Her vision swam. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe her mind was showing her what she wanted to see. But the shape grew larger. Closer. Real. Elsie tried to move. Tried to call out. Only a whisper came. The figure on the horse did not turn away. It slowed. Stopped. And then the rider dismounted. A tall man walked toward her. His skin was dark from sun and time. His long black hair moved with the wind. His shirt was stained with blood. His eyes locked with hers. Elsie did not speak. She could not. But something in his face told her what she needed most to know. She was not alone anymore. Rowan's vision blurred as he gripped the reins. His side burned with every step his horse took. Blood had soaked through the cloth he had pressed against the wound. It came from a rifle shot, fired without warning during a fight near the river. A small group of invaders had crossed the treaty line again. Rowan had fought them off, but not without a price. Now he rode home, alone, with the sun beating down on his shoulders and the pain growing worse by the hour. His horse was tired. Foam clung to its mouth, and each breath it took was deep and strained. They both needed rest. They needed water. Rowan knew a spring lay just beyond the canyon bend, hidden among rocks where his people had gathered water for generations. He kept his eyes low, scanning the path ahead. That was when he saw her. At first, it looked like nothing more than rags tied to a branch. But something about the shape made him pull the reins. He blinked against the heat, unsure if he was seeing clearly. Then the wind shifted. He saw skin pale, burned, hair tangled, soaked in sweat. A girl. She was tied, face down, like an animal left for dead. Rowan's jaw tightened. His heart beat faster. He had seen many things in his years. Cruelty, lies, betrayal. But something about this girl's stillness chilled him in a different way. She was breathing. Barely. He should have left. Everything in him said, ride on. His people and hers were enemies. Saving her could bring danger to his own camp. He was wounded, weak. If this was a trap, it could be his last mistake. And yet, her hands. Rope burns cut deep into her wrists. Her lips were dry. Her chest rose and fell like the wings of a bird too tired to fly. Rowan had seen this before. Not her, but the story. Girls taken, left, forgotten. His people had known the same cruelty. He could not look away. Slowly, he slid from his horse. Pain screamed through his side, but he gritted his teeth. He walked toward her. Her eyes fluttered open. She did not scream. She did not move. She just stared. Rowan knelt beside her. His fingers reached for the knots, careful not to pull her skin. She flinched at his touch, but said nothing. "You are safe now," he said, his voice low and calm. She did not answer, but a tear slid from the corner of her eye, tracing down the dust on her cheek. Rowan's hands worked quickly. The ropes loosened. Her arms dropped to the ground like broken branches. She gasped in pain. Behind them, his horse whinnied softly. Above them, the sky was silent. Rowan knew this choice would bring trouble, but he also knew one thing for certain. No warrior leaves the helpless behind. Not in his tribe. Not in his heart. Elsie's arms trembled as they touched the hot ground. The ropes that had dug into her skin now lay in the dirt beside her. Her wrists were red and swollen, raw from hours of struggle. The man beside her said nothing. His hands, though strong, had been gentle. She expected roughness. Instead, he had treated her like someone who mattered. Rowan moved slowly. He unhooked his water pouch and held it to her lips. The water was warm, but it felt like life. She drank in small sips, then closed her eyes as the pain in her head eased slightly. She had never seen a man like him up close. His skin was dark like river stone, his eyes sharp and still. His clothes were worn but clean. Blood stained the side of his shirt, just above his waist. She saw now that he was hurt, maybe badly, and yet it stopped for her. He could have passed by. He had not. Rowan looked down at her, then glanced toward the horizon. His eyes narrowed. Hoofbeats. Fast. Elsie followed his gaze. 3 riders were coming. Dust rose around them like smoke. She blinked and saw the shape of a wide-brimmed hat. Her stomach dropped. Clayton. He had come back. Beside him rode 2 other men. One carried a rifle across his lap. The other had a pistol already in his hand. Their horses moved in a line, cutting through the canyon like wolves on the hunt. Rowan stood, his breath tight. He reached for the knife at his belt, but did not draw it. He knew the odds. 3 men. One of him, and he was already bleeding. Elsie tried to rise, but her legs gave out. She grabbed a rock to steady herself, her heart pounding. "They will kill you," she whispered. Rowan did not answer. He stepped in front of her. The riders slowed as they approached, forming a loose half-circle. Clayton smiled, but it was not the smile of a friend. It was the smile of a man who thought he had already won. Well, Clayton said, loud enough to echo off the canyon walls. "Looks like you made a little friend." Rowan stood tall, his hand still open, away from his knife. He did not blink. "Let the girl go," Clayton continued. "She belongs to us." "She does not belong to anyone," Rowan said, voice calm. Clayton laughed. "Is that so?" The man with the rifle raised it slightly. The other leaned forward on his saddle, eyes narrow. "I warned you," Elsie said, her voice shaking. "He left me here to die." "She is confused," Clayton snapped. "He does that to women." Rowan did not move. Even with blood on his side and death in his path, he stood between her and the men who had tried to break her. Elsie felt it then, the shift. She was not alone anymore, and neither was Rowan. The canyon held its breath. 3 guns pointed at Rowan. His fingers twitched near his knife, but he did not move. Elsie lay behind him, too weak to run, too scared to speak. The sun burned above. The horses snorted and shifted in place. A single wrong move would end it all. Then a sound like thunder. A rifle shot cracked through the air. The bullet hit the ground between the horses, throwing up dust. The animals panicked, dancing sideways. The man with the rifle nearly dropped it. All 3 riders looked toward the ridge. There, above them, stood a figure outlined against the burning sky. He wore dark braids and a leather vest. The barrel of his rifle caught the light. It was Kai, Rowan's younger brother. Behind him, 3 more warriors appeared, spread out like silent shadows. They held their weapons low but ready. Their faces were unreadable. Rowan's shoulders relaxed just slightly. Help had come. The men with Clayton backed their horses up. Their courage faded like mist. They had not come for a real fight, only to scare a wounded man. Now they saw the truth. This was no ordinary man. But Clayton did not back down. He straightened in the saddle, eyes full of fire. "You think this changes anything?" he shouted. "That one savage with a gun makes you safe?" His words bounced off the rocks and disappeared into heat. He looked at Elsie now, his voice softer but no less dangerous. "She ran away," he said. "I was trying to help her. She's confused." Elsie stared at him, stunned. "She begged me for a way out," Clayton continued. "I gave her a chance. This one," he pointed at Rowan, "this one took her. Lies clean and sharp." Rowan's jaw tightened. Clayton leaned forward, his voice dripping with false pity. "She is not thinking straight. The heat, the fear, all of it. Let her come back with us. Let her be safe." Elsie pushed herself up on her knees. Her arms shook. Her voice trembled. But she spoke. "You left me to die." Clayton froze. "I screamed your name," she said. "You tied me to a tree. You rode away." Clayton's smile faded. "She is lying," he snapped. "You can't trust, You are the liar," Elsie said. Louder this time. Stronger. "You wanted me silent. But I will not be silent anymore." Clayton looked around. Even his own men avoided his eyes. Elsie stood, swaying but upright. Her hands were red with rope burns. Her dress torn. Her face pale. But her voice? Clear. "He saved me," she said, pointing to Rowan. "You threw me away." Kai stepped forward, rifle still raised. "Leave," he said. One word, cold and final. The cowards turned their horses. Only Clayton stayed, hatred burning in his eyes. But even he knew this fight was over. For now, the canyon had gone still again. Even the wind seemed to wait. Elsie stood in the dust, her body shaking but her voice steady. The truth hung in the air, spoken loud enough for the rocks to remember. Clayton sat on his horse, his face twisted in anger. He looked around. His men had backed away. They no longer stood at his side. Their hands were not on their weapons. Their eyes said it all. They had seen enough. Elsie stepped forward. She raised her hands. Red lines wrapped around her wrists, rope burns deep and raw. "Look," she said, turning her arms so all could see. "This is what he did to me." Clayton's mouth opened, but no words came. She reached for the back of her dress and gently pulled the torn fabric down over one shoulder. Her skin was bruised, marked by fingers that had grabbed too hard. Scratches lined her back. "This is where he held me down," she said, her voice low but strong. "This is where I fought." The other two men turned their horses slightly, as if to move farther from Clayton. They had believed his story. But now they looked at the girl he left behind and saw the truth written in her skin. Rowan stepped beside her. He looked up at the men, then at Clayton. "Among my people," he said slowly, "a man who hurts a woman is no man at all." The words hit the canyon like thunder. Clayton's eyes went wide. Fear replaced anger. "You side with her?" he shouted. "A savage and a liar?" His hand dropped toward his belt, toward the pistol holstered at his side. Rowan moved before anyone else did. His hand flew to his belt. A flash of silver cut through the air. The knife spun, fast and silent. Clayton's scream ripped across the rocks as the blade struck. Blood burst from his wrist. His gun fell to the ground. He clutched his arm and nearly toppled from his saddle. "You cut me," he gasped. "You animal. You cut me." Rowan stood still, breathing slow. His knife returned to its sheath. "If I had wanted you dead," he said, "you would be." Clayton's horse danced nervously beneath him, sensing his fear. Elsie did not look away. "You were going to kill me," she said. "You tied me up. You left me for the sun and the birds. And now you act like the victim." Clayton said nothing. He pressed his hand to the wound, blood dripping through his fingers. Justice was not spoken. It stood in the space between them, in the silence, the blood, the broken lie. Kai stepped forward. "You should leave before we stop showing mercy." The men did not wait. They turned their horses and rode. Clayton followed, clutching his wrist, his pride shattered. Elsie watched them disappear into the heat. Beside her, Rowan stood still. And for the first time, she did not feel small. She felt strong. Clayton's horse limped through the dust, his arm wrapped tight in a blood-soaked cloth. His face was pale, his pride shattered. He looked back once, then tried to hold his head high. But there was no power left in his eyes. Only fear. Rowan turned to Elsie. "It is over," he said softly. But Elsie shook her head. "No, not yet." She stepped forward, her feet unsteady in the sand. Her skin still stung. Her wrists still bled. Her voice, however, had found something new. Wait. Bring him back, she said. Kai blinked. What for? Elsie looked at the tree, the same dead branch where she had nearly died. Tie him there, she said, the same way he tied me. The men around her grew silent. Even Rowan took a moment to respond. You want him punished? Rowan asked. I want him to understand, she answered. I want him to feel what it means to be left with no water, no help, and no hope. He wanted me to die that way. Let him feel the same sun. The two men who had ridden with Clayton looked at one another. One of them, older and tired-looking, cleared his throat. You can't do that, he said. Not to a white man. Elsie turned toward him, slow and steady. Why not? She asked. It ain't right, the man muttered. He should be taken to town. Face a judge. Elsie's voice hardened. Would you have said that for me? When he tied me to this tree, did you ask if it was right? Did you talk about judges or laws? The man looked away. She took another step forward. Why is his life worth more than mine? She asked. Because I am a girl? Because I have no family? Because my skin is pale, but my hands are empty? No one answered. Kai crossed his arms. She has a point. Rowan looked at the sky, at the rocks, at the tree. Then he looked at her. What do you want? He asked. Elsie's eyes were clear. I want him tied there for 1 hour, she said. 1 hour in the sun. No water. No comfort. Just silence. Let him taste the fear. The moment hung heavy in the air. The other men said nothing. They watched, listened, thought. Then Rowan nodded. Clayton was pulled from his horse. He cursed, shouted, begged, but no one answered. They tied him to the tree with the same rope, the same knots, the same sun. Elsie stood before him. Now you know what it means, she said. He spat at her feet. She did not move. She did not blink. You thought I would stay broken, she said. But I learned something out here. She turned away. You cannot break someone who has already survived. And with that, she walked back to Rowan's side, head high, voice calm. Fire had not destroyed her. It had made her whole. The canyon had barely cooled when the sound returned. Not the quiet wind. Not the cry of a hawk. Hoofbeats. Fast. Heavy. Many. Rowan looked up at the ridge. A long cloud of dust stretched across the sky. The rhythm of the hooves echoed off the rocks. Dozens of horses coming fast. Kai's face darkened. Soldiers. Rowan's breath caught. He turned to Elsie. How many? She looked heart-sinking. At least 12. Maybe more. Rowan clenched his jaw. Clayton must have sent word before he came. Told them some lie about hostiles. If they find you, Elsie whispered, they will not ask questions. Rowan said nothing. He already knew. Soldiers did not care about the truth in places like this. If they saw an Apache warrior beside a white girl, it would not matter what had happened. They would shoot first and write reports later. Kai stepped closer. We can fight. No, Rowan said. Not here. Not like this. Elsie moved quickly. She picked up the pistol Clayton had dropped earlier. It was still loaded, still warm from the sun. What are you doing? Rowan asked. She looked at him with steady eyes. I am staying. His voice rose. No, they need to find me here, she said, alone. With him. She pointed at Clayton, who still sat tied to the tree, his mouth shut now, eyes wide with fear. I will tell them I captured him, she said. That I ran from him, that I fought him and won. They will never believe. They will believe what they want to believe, she said. A white girl saving herself makes a better story than an Apache saving her. Rowan's face twisted with pain, not from his wound, but from the truth. I will not leave you, he said. Elsie stepped closer, placed the pistol in his hand, and pushed it away. You must. Rowan looked at her, torn between rage and sorrow. If you stay, she said, voice calm, you die. She touched his chest, right where the blood still stained his shirt. If you go, we live. The hoofbeats grew louder. The soldiers were close now. She could hear the shout of sergeant calling orders. Could see the shine of sunlight off metal. Rowan stared at her, at this girl who had once been tied to a tree and left to die. Now she stood like a wall, strong, unshaking. Kai grabbed his brother's arm. We have to move. Rowan's hand shook, but he nodded. He leaned close to Elsie, their foreheads almost touching. You are braver than anyone I have ever known, he said. Elsie smiled, though her eyes were wet. Now go. Rowan and Kai turned. The other warriors faded into the rocks like shadows, gone before the soldiers reached the bend. Elsie stood alone in the heat. Clayton groaned behind her, still tied. Still afraid. She lifted the pistol and waited. The soldiers arrived in a cloud of dust. Their uniforms were dirty from travel, their rifles ready. The leader, a tall man with a gray mustache, pulled his horse to a stop. His eyes scanned the scene. A girl standing in the sun, a man tied to a tree, blood dried on the ground. "Miss," he said, voice sharp, "what happened here?" Elsie lowered the pistol and slowly held it out, grip first. "This man," she said, pointing to Clayton, "attacked me. He tied me up, left me to die." Clayton opened his mouth to speak, but she stepped closer and showed her wrists. The burns were still red, her bruises still dark. The officer's face changed. His hand dropped to his weapon. Two soldiers moved forward, cutting Clayton loose and dragging him to the ground. "She's lying," Clayton yelled. There were others, savages. She was with them. "No one else was here," Elsie said calmly. "Only me. Only him." The officer narrowed his eyes. "You took his gun?" Elsie nodded. "When he came back, I grabbed it before he could reach it. I was lucky." The officer looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Brave," he said. "Foolish, maybe, but brave." They tied Clayton's hands. He shouted curses, tried to twist the story, but no one listened. The sight of the bruises, the burns, the dried blood told more truth than any words ever could. Back in town, the sheriff questioned her gently. The doctor cleaned her wounds. People whispered when they saw her. Some looked at her with pity, others with quiet respect. The trial lasted 3 days. Clayton's lawyer called her confused, called her unstable, tried to say she had imagined everything. But the evidence said otherwise. The bruises, the rope marks, the silence of the two men who had ridden with Clayton and had now disappeared from town altogether. In the end, the judge stood, his voice firm. "Mr. Clayton Barrick, you are found guilty of attempted murder, false imprisonment, and assault. You are hereby sentenced to hang by the neck until dead." Clayton screamed as they pulled him away. Elsie did not move. Justice had come, but it did not feel like victory. It felt like silence. That night, Elsie stood alone behind the town hotel. She looked up at the stars, remembering the canyon, the wind, the voice that had told her she was not alone. She had lived. She had been heard. But something inside her had changed forever. She was not just the girl who had survived. She was the girl who had saved herself. And somewhere out there, in the wide darkness beyond the lights of town, she knew Rowan was still riding. She touched the edge of the bandage on her wrist. Freedom, she had learned, was not given. It was claimed, and she had claimed hers with blood, fire, and truth. The town moved on. People spoke of Elsie in quiet voices. Some called her strong. Others called her lucky. A few still questioned her story, but not out loud. No one dared. Clayton's sentence had silenced most doubts. Justice, after all, had spoken. Elsie stayed in a small room above the bakery. The woman who owned it gave her fresh bread each morning and never asked questions. The days passed slowly. She worked in the kitchen, folded linens, kept her hands busy, but her heart stayed restless. Each night, after the town lights dimmed, she walked to the edge of the desert. She stood beneath the stars, listening for hoofbeats that never came, until one did. It was past midnight when she heard it, a single horse, moving slow, careful. The moon hung full above the hills. The wind was cool, brushing against her skin like a whisper. She stepped away from the town road and waited. Out of the shadows, he came. Rowan. His horse was the same. His eyes were the same, dark, calm, and steady. But he looked stronger now. The wound was healed. His shoulders stood straighter. And still, when he saw her, something soft broke across his face. "I was not sure if you would be here," he said. "I was not sure you would come," she answered. They stood in silence, the air between them full of everything they had lived through. Rowan dismounted. His feet landed softly in the dirt. "I'll watch from the hills," he said. "I waited until I knew you were safe." Elsie swallowed the lump in her throat. "I am," she said. "I think." He stepped closer. "My people asked about you," he said. "My brother too." They remember what you did. Elsie looked away, her voice quiet. They saved me too. I never got to thank them. You did, Rowan said, with your courage. He paused, then added, and there's something I must say. She turned to him, eyes wide. You have a place with my people, he said. If you choose it. The offer settled over her like a warm blanket. No pressure, no demand, just an open door. Elsie looked back at the town. Its windows were dark, its people asleep, a place that had given her justice, but not peace. Then she looked at him, the man who had stopped for a dying girl, the man who had stood between her and death, the man who had never asked for thanks, only truth. She reached out her hand. Rowan took it without hesitation. Their fingers locked together like they had always belonged. Elsie smiled, a small, real smile. I am ready, she said, and as the moon lit their path, she stepped into the night beside him. Not running, not hiding, choosing. The desert sun no longer burned Elsie. It warmed her. Her skin had turned golden from the months outdoors. Her hands had grown callous from work, stitching hides, carrying water, grinding roots for medicine. She spoke Rowan's language with care and listened even more. The women of the Mountain Hawk tribe had tested her, watched her, waited. Now they smiled when she passed. Children called her by her new name, Nada, which meant stands without fear. She had married Rowan under open sky, with the blessing of the elders. No church, no priest. Only fire, earth, and truth. She wore no ring, but her eyes told all who looked that she belonged. Not as a guest, but as one of them. Then the message came. A rider from the edge of the hills brought news. Clayton had escaped. Not alone. Help had come. Old friends, bitter men, outlaws and drifters with nothing left but hatred. Together, they called themselves the Dust Circle. They blamed the tribe for everything they had lost. They called Rowan a thief. They called Elsie a traitor. They were coming. With guns. With fire. Rowan gathered his warriors. The camp prepared, but the truth was clear. They were outnumbered. Badly. Elsie stood outside their tent, wind brushing through her braid. She remembered the tree, the rope, the silence. Rowan found her there. They will want you, he said. You are the reason they ride. I know. You could go. Hide in the canyons. Wait for it to pass. Elsie looked at the horizon. I have hidden enough. Rowan nodded, pride in his eyes. The next morning, Elsie stood with the warriors. Her hands held a bow she had carved herself. Her shoulders were strong, her eyes steady. The men of the Dust Circle came at dawn, shouting, shooting into the sky, thinking fear would break them. But they found something else, a wall of resolve. A woman who had once been tied to a tree, now standing tall beside warriors. Clayton rode to the front, a scar on his wrist where Rowan's blade had cut deep. He saw her. You belong with your own, he shouted. You've forgotten who you are. Elsie raised her voice. I remember exactly who I am. She stepped forward, not flinching, not hiding. I'm the girl you left to die. I am the woman you could not destroy. And I will never be silent again. The standoff held like a drawn bow. Then the arrows flew. The battle was fierce. The fire loud. But it was not chaos. It was choice. Elsie fought like someone who had been broken and rebuilt. When the dust settled, the Dust Circle was gone. Some fled, some fallen. Clayton lay unconscious, bound once more, this time by warriors who showed no fear of him. Elsie knelt beside Rowan, who had taken a bullet to the shoulder. He smiled through the pain. You chose to fight. She kissed his hand. I chose to live. What would you have done if you were in Elsie's place? Would you have hidden or stood your ground? Tell me in the comments. If this story moved you, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that speak to the soul. Because here, we tell stories that remind us. Even the quietest voice can become the loudest truth.